Hello and welcome to Why Wasn't It Better? I'm your host, Patrick Darms.
And I'm your co-host, Anton Paras.
And this is something of a tradition for us now, Anton. We're recapping season 9. 9 seasons done.
Yeah, 9. Where does the time go?
I don't know. I mean, we're coming up on the 3rd year anniversary of the podcast, too.
Jeez.
Almost 200 episodes, about 180 movies reviewed.
I think this would be a fun metric for people. Of our list of films, what percentage of the total list is that even?
Is that what?
What of the total films that we have listed to cover on this show, where does that even sit, the amount of films that we've covered? And people will say, like, that's a lot of movies, but
it's about 12%.
Yeah, where we got a long way to go, people.
We do have a long way to go. So for those of you who are wondering why we haven't covered such and such film, don't worry, we'll get to it. I can't tell you when, but we will get to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, so in a couple episodes from now, it will actually be the 200th episode. So we're going to release a special episode for that, just like we did for the 100th anniversary or the 100th episode mark. And I'll go in a little bit more to the metrics there, like what types of films we've reviewed,
Mm-hmm.
decades that we focused on, directors that we've hit on, stuff like that.
Well, I think that's I'll just say this: 3 years, 9 seasons, 2 pretty great people on this show, and 1 very grateful co-host that's happy to be on the ride.
You are too kind, sir. Couldn't have done it without you. I have the perfect co-host for it.
Well, why don't we dive into this recap episode?
Yeah, of course. So as usual, we're going to actually recap the season that we just concluded. And then we'll give listeners a preview of what they can expect for season 10, which just because it's season 10 is going to be a special one.
Mm-hmm.
I think we say that at the end of every season, but this one will be special, we promise. So, we can't forget to do some shameless promotion. We do have a Patreon. Do you want to go into a little bit of the details of that?
Of course. So, folks, make sure that you check out our Patreon. If you're really enjoying Why Wasn't It Better and want to support the show, check it out. It's at patreon.com/WWIBofficial. And we got some pretty fantastic perks. I mean, come on, our patrons are getting a really good time. So for just $2 a month, you get all episodes ad-free and a whole week early before everyone else, when applicable. And at $5 a month, you get everything from the $2 tier, plus a supporter shout out on every season recap and access to special episodes when applicable. And for $10 a month, you get all of that, plus Patreon exclusive episodes like season recaps, mailbag discussions, and even a chance to have us revisit earlier films upon request. So we have quite a bit. And you know what? I just want to say thank you so much to all of our patrons, all our supporters, but most especially to our patrons who are making sure to keep the lights on. We really appreciate your support. It helps us dive into these movies that could have been great and bring you more deep dives, hot takes, and laughs every week. And again, if you want to be a part of it, head over to patreon.com/WWIBofficial and join in on the fun.
And I also want to give a shout out to our actual patrons, some new ones who have joined us recently and some old ones. Miles O'Brien Davis, great name. Yep, James Smetanen, Sean Ramswick, Carol Convine, Dan, Kenny D, Thomas Pia, Christopher Kowalczyk, Paul Kelly, Snack Demon, Rice Ball, T Sizzle, Paul K, Nathan Ack, and Nathan. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
We appreciate your support very much. I want to remind all of our listeners that if you have a suggestion or any feedback for us and you're not on any of the social media platforms, you want to get in touch with us directly, you can always send us an email. It's wwibpodcast@gmail.com. We check that fairly regularly. We're going to take some mailbag questions later in today's episode. So don't ever think that old school email isn't a great way to communicate with us, because I love me some old school email. And I think I want to talk about Letterboxd really quick. That's something, it's kind of a recent addition.
Mm-hmm.
I highly encourage our listeners to follow us on Letterboxd. We update that fairly regularly. We have all the seasons broken out there. If you're not on, if you just don't want to just go to YouTube and check us out there and you just want to look at the films that we've covered, that we're going to cover, our entire master list of films that we intend to cover is on Letterboxd. I think it's 1,150 something at this point. So definitely follow us there. It's a great way to stay engaged with the podcast.
Yeah, there's some like I love how Letterboxd has really grown, because I think part of it is people always want to see like if there's an actor or director that they like and the letterbox that they have. So it's super fun. Definitely highly encourage everyone to check it out.
I also wanted to give a shout out to our producer, Eric Taylor. He has a YouTube channel, Aliens in the Doghouse. He's big into video game reviews and walkthroughs. So if you're into that sort of thing, check out his channel there. And then, Zion Parker, who's been a beloved guest many times on our podcast.
Yeah.
He wrote a cookbook called Delicious Not Suspicious.
Yeah.
That's been in publication for, I think, about a year now.
Zion's a bit of a renaissance man, right? Writer.
Yeah.
Author, works in the industry, podcast guest, excellent podcast guest. There are probably more things that he can share with us on the next episode that he appears on.
That's right. We always try to get more out of him. He just has so much to offer. Now, as far as some guests go, Film Strip Podcast, friends of the show, another great movie review podcast.
Shout
Jay
out.
Skipworth has been a guest on our show a couple of times. We've been a guest on their show a couple of times. Just wanted to give them a big shout out. Check out the Film Strip Podcast. Those guys are great.
Mm-hmm.
They have kind of like a rotating panel of guests, which I really enjoy.
I think it's also just a very special, just because it's the first podcast that we've been on as guests, right?
Yeah.
So like, again, huge shout out. That's super special moment. But yeah, Jay, love what you guys are doing.
And then of course we have an upcoming guest named Cam Sully, who is one of the hosts of the Jacked Up Review Show podcast. Wanted to give him a shout out as well. He's been really supportive. He reached out. He's a friend of Film Strip, I believe. And he reached out. He's going to be on our podcast. We're going to be on his at some point. So before we get to the mailbag, Anton, any films that you're looking forward to covering or just seeing later this year?
Yeah, I mean, how do I put this? I think we always talk about hyped up films with like big directors. I want to kind of spin it and talk about films that I really want people to steer away from, or just I can't believe they're making this.
Okay.
Animal Farm. What if I told you that there was an Animal Farm film coming out in 2026?
I mean, sure. I'd say okay.
It's marketed as more of a fun Pixar romp with like cute baby versions of the animals, and also Seth Rogen plays Snowball, I'm pretty sure.
Doesn't sound like anything I'd be interested in, but we'll see.
I'm terrified. It's also released by like a major studio, which there's also many things wrong with that. I have no high expectations for that film, but I just wanted to make sure it's on people's radar that they're even making it. Something that I'm actually like looking forward to just for funsies, Mortal Kombat 2.
That's coming out soon, right?
If soon as May, yes.
That's kind of soon. It'll be here soon enough.
Yeah. Mainly just because, I'm a big video game fan. There were a lot of things that didn't go right with the first Mortal Kombat that was released, or with the first Mortal Kombat reboot that was released a couple years ago. But I'm just trying to stay optimistic because it feels like this film, they're trying to embrace more of the campiness. A lot of reshoots though, and they pushed it back into the year, so that's never a good sign. But I'm always going to tune in when it comes to video game adaptations, for better or worse.
Usually worse. We are going to have to do a video game mini season soon.
I mean, absolutely. I think maybe, who knows, next year we do also have, or in this year we also have the Super Mario Galaxy movie, which is pretty big.
That's going to be big. I'll certainly see it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure my nieces will ask me and my wife to take them to see it. We reviewed the first Mario movie. We liked it.
I mean, of course, being a huge nerd, I had my gripes, but I'll probably still have my gripes with this one. But if we were ever going to do a mini season, maybe 2026 is it for video games, but we'll see.
I'll give you some really boring answers really quick. I will definitely be seeing The Odyssey, the new Nolan movie, the new Spielberg movie, Disclosure Day for sure. Much later in the year, we're going to get Dune Part 3. I'll certainly be checking that out. And then The Adventures of Cliff Booth, which looks like it's going to be a Netflix movie. But, Tarantino writing a David Fincher directed film is very intriguing. So probably very stereotypical answers for you, but those are the kinds of movies I go to see in the theater. I don't know what to tell you.
Pretty high quality. I also know that when it comes to films that you will see in theaters, it's a very short list. So at least there is a list of quality films out there, or at least that we expect.
Right then. Mailbag.
We
got some great questions here, and we encourage all of our listeners, please write in. This is probably the best use of email that you can have. You want to read the questions, or do you want me to?
Why don't we trade off? That'll be fun.
All right. I'll go first. Number 1, loved your tribute to Cary Hiroyuki Tagawa. Why do you not do more of these tribute episodes?
It's our first one. Our first one specifically without a movie attached.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's one reason.
I mean, my answer is I think, simply convenience. We had the time to do that one. And then, of course, we covered The Natural to honor Robert Redford. But the simple fact is, you and I record these things at least a month in advance. We usually don't have the time to do these things last minute.
Right. Yeah, and it worked out timing wise. You totally right, Pat. But I think with kind of the serendipity of doing that, we found that it's a really fun kind of episode and fans seem to really like it. So I think it does make sense to maybe have a few more sprinkled in there for fun.
Yeah, I mean, if we have the time, we'll certainly do more.
Yep, absolutely. So this is a really fun one. What are 3 movies you love that everyone else hates, and vice versa? So, Pat, what do you got?
Well, I want to temper this by saying I don't know if everyone hates what I'm about to say, but 3 films that we've covered that just don't seem to be well liked or well seen. Rising Sun. I talk about that movie a lot. Batman Forever. Although, as we found out, by the way, that's our most popular episode. Plenty of people love that movie. And then Proof of Life, that Russell Crowe, Meg Ryan movie that I really, really enjoy. That, I mean, frankly, I just don't know anyone who's seen it. Now, vice versa. Popular films that I don't like that everyone else seems to like. I cannot stand the movie Rogue One, the Star Wars movie. I think it's completely overrated. I have no interest in ever revisiting it. I mean, we're going to cover it for the podcast, so I'm going to have to do it. But I never understood the obsession with that movie. I don't think it's a bad movie, but it adds nothing to the Star Wars story for me. And then this may be even more controversial. I don't really ever rewatch any Martin Scorsese films.
Okay.
One of my secrets is I'm not a huge fan of Martin Scorsese, and that's not to say that I don't think he's a very good director, because I think he is. His films just cover a lot of subject matter that frankly does not interest me. So a little hot takey there for you. What about you, Anton?
Yeah, so I had to go with films that just were not critically received well. One, Judge Dredd. That one is like, I think you could probably find you could probably find fans if you like turn a rock over somewhere. But
the Stallone one?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I have a ton of fun watching Judge Dredd. I think it's hilarious because it has so much of it that is accurate to the comics, but so much of it that isn't accurate to the comics. And it was still at a time where you have some inspiration from successes of Batman to really lead you into Judge Dredd, but they studio still didn't get it. But I still love it for the campiness and just, again, the hilarity of that film. Part of it is just enjoying how bad it is to an extent, but also genuinely enjoying a lot of it. Too Fast, Too Furious. It's not universally, I think, the first film that people think of in the Fast and Furious series that they say ooh, they really enjoy. But I think if that had just come out as its own movie, it's already just very entertaining. That whole series has turned into an entirely different beast, but self-contained, I think Too Fast, Too Furious is really fun. And I don't think it's a ton of credit nowadays, because also I don't think a ton of people think about that movie nowadays. So that one for sure. And then The Frighteners. I can't think of anyone that's really ever seen The Frighteners or even gives it the time of day, but it's a very, very obscure Michael J. Fox film that had a huge budget that bombed at the box office, and had a pretty rushed production. The effects look pretty dated, but it did still have some of that early charm. So I really do enjoy that film, and it's one that I think probably I'm the only house, ours is the only household that watches it on a regular basis. But yeah, I'd love if more people gave that film a chance. Have you seen The Frighteners?
Yeah, I think it sucks.
Yeah, no, it's good to have films that you can stand business on, and that is definitely a film I will stand business on.
Now, what about the reverse of this?
So this is going to sound super... This is probably going to piss off a lot of people that are fans of this. It's definitely more of a cult film, but Mars Attacks. I'm just not a huge fan. I feel like it was a pretty
well-liked movie.
Yeah, especially just like the aesthetic of it. It has its it has like a pretty big fan base. And like I'm just not a fan. I just I didn't really like how it treated a lot of the characters. It just felt really like a huge confusing mess. The effects look pretty terrible by today's standards, and not even in a fun way. So I just, I just really don't like it. Another one, and I think like maybe I just stand I just stand this way because I hate what it's taken from us as a franchise. But like looking back, I really, really dislike Avatar. I just really not into it. It probably when I was younger watching it in theaters, I do appreciate like the effects, but I just can't. Like, it's not a world that I would ever want to go back to. I think it's a very like low bar franchise. I think it's a very low bar like fantasy world that like I'm not that interested in. And it all started because of that film. So like I'm really not into it. I could be fine if I never watched Avatar again.
I'm with you there.
And then the next one is Furiosa. And so like I really wanted to pick like a recent film. And I don't know, just to me, like that was an example of like the sequel that or prequel that we get from a film that kind of came out of nowhere. But I just wasn't impressed. I feel like there was a lot of cliche usage of cinematography, and at the same time, it just wasn't that enjoyable of a film. I didn't love the main character.
Who asked you that movie?
No one really. Like, again, there was excitement because of Charlize Theron early on, but otherwise, like, the hype had just died down by the time they finally released it. I just wasn't a fan. So yeah, those are my three for at least hate. And yeah, come at me, folks.
Maybe they will. Which movie do you want to do, but you can't justify it for the why wasn't it better concept?
Ooh, that's a fun one. I think like the films that like I really want to do or just want to talk about, it's hard to identify like what's bad about them, or like if we were to talk about them, it would just be huge gush fests, which we've done before. But like, for example, I'd love to talk about The Godfather or Godfather Part 2, but that's really not this show.
My answers are kind of similar. Like, one of my all-time favorite movies is the first Pirates of the Caribbean. But that's kind of the opposite of why wasn't it better, because the expectations for that were very low and it exceeded all of them. And it would just be a gush fest, and we could do it. And I wrote down also like the first Iron Man, the first Avengers, because we've covered a lot of the Marvel films already, and we've omitted those two ones most notably. And people have asked me about that, like, oh, why didn't you cover Iron Man 2 and 3? Well, why not the first Iron Man? I'm like, because the first Iron Man nobody really expected much from, and it turned out to be great. It's the opposite of what I wanted this podcast to be. So that's it.
And then the next question, which director most consistently makes why wasn't it better style movies?
Well, now this is a multifaceted answer I have for this. It's almost always going to be the big names, right? Steven Spielberg, James Cameron, Ridley Scott. We talk about Ridley Scott a lot. We clown on him a lot. I ran some numbers. We have covered 6 Spielberg movies so far. 7 if you count Poltergeist, which I think you could. We've covered 5 films directed by John Glenn because they're Bond films, although I don't necessarily count that. If you're like, oh, you guys want to cover some John Glenn? Like,
yeah.
And then we've done 4 by Tim Burton and Ridley Scott, respectively. So it's going to be those types of directors. Now, our all-time list of 1,100 plus films, I did not do the numbers on that.
Okay. I think those are very solid answers. I mean, a couple directors I wanted to talk about that it's interesting to think because they have big fans, but I think a lot of people will say their imperfections with their film or they just didn't do well in the box office. I think if you look at like David Lynch as an example, like pretty well known director, has a huge fan base, but I can't really say his films are hit films, are they?
No, he didn't do blockbusters.
Yeah, but I think like that's part of the fun of being able to analyze like what about his films don't really draw in like the blockbuster appeal. Why didn't they do better at the box office? But then you realize like for a lot of listeners that aren't familiar with his films, that's the fun of it. Like this is a director that defies what is the standard mainstream and creates some like pretty fascinating films that will haunt you. So for me, like I think like that's one of the directors that I'd love to talk about more, but also I think really fits the bill here.
Building off what you just said, there's a couple names I want to throw out. We are going to be covering a number of films directed by Sidney Pollack. He's one of my favorite directors. Now, we've already covered Out of Africa. And he's kind of like in between the two types of filmmakers we were just talking about. He did some very successful movies that you could call blockbusters, like The Firm and Out of Africa. But then he also did very smaller, like intimate movies. So he kind of sits in between. And then, you know, my dad pointed this out to me. He's like, you guys, whether it's controversy or not, should cover Woody Allen. Because I know his name, you know, he's a very polarizing figure in the industry for the obvious reasons. But we would be remiss not to cover some of his films because, again, his films never made much money at the box office. But he had and still does, a huge following. And he directed a ton of movies.
Okay. I think like that's a really fun lens to look at it, is that like I think it challenges people, right?
Yeah.
Just so we have to make sure that we're separating, or at least not trying to bury history, but at the same time look at the films.
I don't know if you remember this. On one of the episodes, we actually talked about this with Kai, you know, one of our many distinguished guests. And he very intelligently said, you guys should never cover something just because of someone's name is controversial, which I thought was really good advice.
Yeah, that is very solid. That is very wise words.
Next question. Has a listener recommendation ever become one of your favorites?
Yeah. I think one listener recommendation, or I don't know if it's so much more recommendation or just like listener prompted, but revisiting Tron was really fun. I think that knowing that listeners wanted to kind of hear, like, do we have any fresh new takes? It was a really interesting exercise. And at the same time, just like fun to revisit, especially because at the time, Tron Ares was waiting in the wings to release. So it was all very relevant. And we all know what happened with Tron Ares.
Did you see it yet?
Yeah.
Did you like it?
No.
I didn't either.
Yeah.
I don't know when we're going to get to it. I'm not in any hurry.
We'll be okay. I don't think anyone's in a hurry to think about that film again.
So I have two answers for this. I wouldn't call them favorites of mine, but I really liked Gran Turismo and Transformers 1. They were both listener requests that we covered, and I enjoyed both of those.
What movie do you refuse to cover and why? I think this is like kind of a combined one. That's funny.
Well, this is a funny way. Okay. So we've already vetoed one listener request, which is Jurassic World Rebirth. I just had zero interest in watching that. You did too. I've already expressed my distaste for M. Night Shyamalan. I don't have a lot of interest in his movies. Refuse to cover is interesting. A lot of the newer superhero stuff just doesn't really interest me. Would I refuse to cover it? I don't know, but I'm more inclined to push it out and cover it way later, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think like that's a really tough one, just because I don't know. It's like probably like the biggest reason, right? Like we don't even want to cover Rebirth is just. I mean, I'll say like everyone else is going to be covering it when it's out, and it's just what do people expect? It's not going to be anything deep. It's not going to be anything interesting. And I feel like we have just so much more fun talking about films that either other, shows aren't covering, or films that we are just much more interested in. And I think like being genuine in that way is just much more enjoyable when we actually do cover films. If I had to think of films that maybe like I don't really want to cover, or at least like I just feel less inclined, we haven't covered. There are films with some cult status that I just am not excited, like that I'm just not as excited about, despite like being big within like the horror scene. Like for example, I've been asked before, like, would you guys ever cover like Human Centipede? And I'm like, I don't think so. Like, it's just not something I'm that interested in.
That's a good point. I would not cover that film. I have no interest in that.
Yeah, but like very, like it did terrible in the box office, but like it really found life, like just on word of mouth and folks wanting to see it because of, again, just like it being a very terrible premise. I don't think I'd ever really want to cover it for the show.
If you could fix one movie you've discussed, what's the first change you'd make?
I would talk to Jack Nicholson and I'd say, hey, like, don't do this, man. Don't make the two Jakes. Just don't do it. You're good. Like you're gonna win an Academy Award in a few years. Just wait it out. You don't have to be a director, man. You're fine. You've done it all. Soon enough, you're just going to be enjoying yourself going to Chili's during your free time while just doing speedball and like hanging out in a hot tub. Just don't make this film.
I have a similar answer. I would erase Alien 3 from existence. I hate that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would also convince Sean Connery to stay on for On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Just imagine that movie with Connery in it instead of Lazenby. And let me clarify something. Imagine a physically fit, emotionally invested Sean Connery, not Diamonds Are Forever Sean Connery.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. I do want to add one more film, and actually this is like more of like I talked about this on the episode, and I just want to emphasize it again for the Super Mario Brothers movie. I just think it makes sense to not include all of the like pop songs in the film. I'd say like you don't really need, like, if you want to like make this like a better film, don't include the pop songs. Really invest in the score to reflect like the video game like original music, but to beef it up for the big screen. Maybe even write like new songs and motifs for the film, because it's a movie that really deserves it. It's an IP that really deserves it. So yeah, I just think like even just making that adjustment, like it'll stop me from cringing whenever I hear the Beastie Boys in the opening for Super Mario's.
That really irked you, didn't it?
It really, really did.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you got the next question.
Yeah. Is there a film that you've covered that you change your mind about after recording?
Alien Romulus for sure. The more I think about it, the more I dislike it. I would say pretty much everything else we covered, I would mostly feel the same about if we were to revisit it, I think.
Mm-hmm. I think the film that I have to go back on that I like gave a pretty high score to, and like it had a lot of hype at the time, is Oppenheimer. I remember when we covered that with Zion way back in the day. It feels like way back in the day, at least. There was a lot of hype around that film, especially coming around award season. And I'd say like now I do appreciate it even more. And I don't know if enough to raise the score, but especially like when it comes to films that win for like Best Picture, I think it is always good to kind of look back and say like, is it still something you'd watch? And I'm like, yeah, Oppenheimer, I've definitely watched again. I just need like half a day.
Last question. Would you ever debate a listener who disagrees with a take? Can I answer this first?
Sure.
Since I'm the host and it's my podcast. My answer is no.
Okay.
The only person I'm interested in debating is my co-host, you, Anton. I'm not interested in having someone on the show just to debate them. Also, a movie debate, I don't think I'm going to change someone's opinion. I don't think they're going to change mine. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, but that's not why I started this podcast.
I wouldn't want to have a discussion debate, but if you want to like box, we can box. You want to jujitsu, we can throw a little bit. You want to drag race, I'll drag race anyone. Not that I'm good at it.
Yeah, like I'm sure I could find hundreds of listeners who can tell me why I'm wrong about thinking Rogue One is an overrated movie. I don't care. I don't have any interest in debating someone about that.
Yeah. I think if people want to debate, and I'll just say this one last thing. If you're focused on debating like our takes, like you really aren't listening to like what we have to say, because we say it a lot. Like, these are just our opinions, and we don't want that to take away from your enjoyment of like a film. And really, I really want that to hit home with people. Like, even if we say something that may hurt your feelings, it's all just, again, like our opinion, how we perceive it. And I don't want that to take away from anyone's enjoyment from a film that we cover. So again, just enjoy the film, and these are our takes.
That's well said. And, just to add to that, because I this is a while back, I had someone write in and tell me how much they disagreed with pretty much all of my takes on movies. And at that point, it's just like, find another podcast. Like, what are you listening for?
Don't listen.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we're not like, I would say that like we appreciate everyone that is listening, and we appreciate it because, if we weren't recording and putting this out, we'd still be having these discussions. So if you like it, subscribe, check out our Patreon. And if you don't, it's okay. Listen to something else. And that's my take on it.
All right, let's recap season 9. You want to go through the movies that we covered?
Yeah. I think last time, or the format that we've been going through, is we list all the films, but then we go into our questions, and that's how we go through the different films in that way. So season 9, our most ambitious season yet until season 10. So we started off the season with GoldenEye. Getting into spooky season, of course, we start covering Poltergeist, The Thing, Interview with a Vampire, Last Night in Soho, and then rounding out our spooky season with Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. We then covered Elio, which of course was the in-theater Pixar film. We covered King Kong, A House of Dynamite, Presumed Innocent, The Emergency Anton Ask, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie. We covered Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, Anastasia, Dr. Zhivago. We had our special tribute to Cary Hiroyuki Tagawa. We covered young Sherlock Holmes, The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, A Christmas Carol. We did another ranking episode this season with ranking the MCU Phase 1. We covered Finding Forrester, Munich, Wake Up Dead Man, A Knives Out Mystery, which released that same week. We covered I Am Legend, Captain America Civil War, Torn Curtain, The Emperor's New Groove, Chicago, and then we rounded out the season, of course, with Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. So quite a list of films all over the place genre-wise. We had a ton of great guests, and we're going to talk about all those great guests and all of our thoughts on those films. We do have our questions that'll help us dig in. Pat, what were some of your favorite films that we covered this season?
In no particular order, GoldenEye is one of my favorite Bond films. I love it. Mm-hmm. The Thing is one of the best films ever. No surprises there. I really enjoyed talking about Star Trek VI. It's my favorite Star Trek movie of the originals. And then Finding Forrester and Munich.
Yeah, it's so fun looking at The Thing, and that was also for me like one of my favorite films of the season. It's also one of my favorite films of all time. We had Sean on as a guest for that episode, and it was pretty unanimous. Like, a fantastic film.
That's an interesting one because it was a total gush fest from the three of us, but it more than qualified for why wasn't it better, because it was a box office bomb. Critical bomb, too. Nobody liked it in 1982.
But to this day, still so influential, still so well-loved, and just always fun one to revisit. And with GoldenEye, I mean, we can't go a season without covering some 007, and loved having Kai on for that, talking about, the first film of the Brosnan era. And, I've, of course, grew up on Pierce Brosnan myself, so love that. Another film that I really loved, and it was just super fun covering it, Anastasia. I think like that was one of my favorite films to cover last season, or this past season. I think part of it is not only just because it's it's a non-Disney animated hit, or it's a non-Disney animated princess film,
which is now on Disney Plus,
which has now also a big fan base. We also were able to cover that with our producer Eric and his lovely wife. So loved having them both on for that with a 4 people episode coverage.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. That was a real treat, having a husband and wife duo on as guests.
When are we going to have both of our wives on an episode?
Never. My wife has already told me repeatedly she never wants to be a guest. So
maybe like if we find a kind of episode to take, maybe not like a full film one, we could maybe try to figure it out.
Good luck.
We'll see. Yeah, and I did want to mention Captain America: Civil War. It's
great.
I think pretty unanimous. Again, another pretty unanimous. Like this is peak Marvel Disney. We had, of course, our resident nerds on the episode. I'm sure they're going to love that. Shouts out Garrett and Ivan. Loved having you guys on. Always love having you guys on. And also really fun just being able to celebrate Garrett just because he's also a new dad. So super fun to have him on the show. And yeah, we're girl dad strong around here at Why Wasn't It Better? So we covered a bit of the favorite films. What were our least favorite of the season, Pat?
House of Dynamite stunk. That was a total waste of our time. I'm sorry that I made us cover it. I don't want to. Yeah. I have nothing else to say about that film.
Yeah, there wasn't much to say about that film.
I think King Kong was every bit the disappointment that I remembered it to be. You and our guest Peter were kinder to that, but I never want to see that snooze fest again. And then I think honestly the most surprising that I disliked was the Hitchcock film we covered, Torn Curtain. Just really boring.
Yeah, I had a bit more love for King Kong, and I think I'm actually gonna try watching it one more time. One of our listeners actually reached out and just shared why he really loves that film, and I was like, hey, like I actually really like your perspective. I'll watch it again, just kind of thinking about that. So giving a shout out. Who was that? His name's Kevin Schaefer, really great guy. Okay. Really wanted, giving him a shout out on the episode, but definitely gonna give it a watch again, especially with what he shared.
You let me know.
Absolutely. Another film I just don't think I'm ever gonna watch I Am Legend again now that we've covered it.
Definitely
I just don't feel the need to. I didn't score it horribly, but I feel like it still sits in that level of like below average that I'm good. Covered it with, of course, Dennis, which shout out Dennis. Love your hilarious takes on the observations made in this film, because this film needed some positivity for what terrible things we ended up seeing on screen.
What about films that surprised us the most?
I think film that really I really loved covering The Emperor's New Groove. I liked it going into it, but I think what really surprised me about it is it's just an amazing setup of it shouldn't have been as good as it is. It's not a perfect film by any means, but it still had a lot of really great quality, a lot of stuff that I enjoyed. It was also our first time having guest Adam on the show, Adam Heck, which, loved having him on. So I think that really surprised me, just being able to like dive in and learn more through the research and production of that film, which, folks, tune in if you haven't listened to that episode. It's a pretty beefy one.
Really fun movie to talk about with Adam. He was a great guest. He's very passionate about that film. We're going to have him back next season to talk another Disney film. Hint, hint.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was surprising. I mean, I too liked that film, but it was interesting to revisit it because I hadn't seen it in a while. I'll give a shout out to the Power Rangers movie. I really did not want to cover it when you suggested it, and I didn't think it was good, but I mean, I also didn't give it a great score, but I was pleasantly surprised by it was less horrible than I thought it would be, and it was surprisingly watchable.
Yeah, for a quote unquote big budget like film, it really was just more of a glorified episode, and we said about as much. Ivan also shared like the very strong affinity for the Power Rangers like I did growing up, and even now to this day. So I think like there was a very nostalgia fueled, but fun to see like how that film still holds up even from when we were kids.
And then also Halloween 4. Mm-hmm. It's just fun.
Yeah.
It's not great, but it's fun.
It's fun. I think we had Sean on for that episode, who's typically been on for, great horror classics. And I think it's just, I don't know how to describe it. Like, it's the right, like, we're getting into the zone of like Michael possessing his niece, and whatever fun direction, of course, that leads to in the future Halloween films.
We'll find out next year when we cover Halloween 5.
Exactly. A film that really surprised me, or just like, I'm really glad we covered it, was, Munich. We talked about how that's a film that's just not talked about. Really important themes. I'll just say, sad how relevant it still is, to talk about some of the politics in that film. Of course, we're not a political pod, but overall quality of that film is fantastic and great to revisit and think of it with a bit more of a critical lens.
That's a good shout. Young Sherlock Holmes was also fun to revisit.
Yeah. Young Sherlock Holmes with
also forgotten film.
With its influence on Harry Potter.
Yeah. Just want to give a shout out to all of our guests that we had appearing on season 9. Kai, Paul, Sean, Jake, Zion, Peter, Jay, Ivan, Ben, Eric and his wife Caitlin, Nathan, Garrett, Dennis, and Adam.
Yeah, you guys are awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat film. It's always a pleasure. And we're looking forward to a lot more fun going into season 10 and talking about more films and more good times.
Speaking of more good times, let's give the preview for season 10.
All right.
This is more or less what you're going to hear in release order. Obviously, this is penciled in. This may change slightly. But here we go. We're going to start off the season with one of Anton's favorite films, Big Trouble in Little China. We are going to be covering a John Wayne film, Rio Bravo. Tomorrow Never Dies, Back to Bond. A film that no one has ever heard of and no one has ever seen, called The Exception. Batman Mask of the Phantasm. We're going to be doing a Star Trek ranking episode. Then we're going to cover the next Star Trek film chronologically, Star Trek Generations.
Ugh.
It's kind of boring, but it'll be fun to talk about. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Hercules, No Country for Old Men, The Robe for Holy Week. Then we're going to get into our first mini-season, a Stephen King mini-season. We're going to talk Children of the Corn, Hearts in Atlantis, Dr. Sleep, and The Running Man, the new Running Man. Solo, a Star Wars story for Star Wars Day. Moonwalker, the Michael Jackson movie from the 80s. That'll be fun. Back to Bond again with The World Is Not Enough. Pokemon, the movie 2000. Tower Heist, Fantastic Voyage, Airport 1975, Toy Story 4, Mission Impossible 3, an Alfred Hitchcock film, Independence Day. It's going to be the 30th anniversary. And we're going to round out the season with Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince.
Good times.
Yeah. 26 films, maybe a little bit extra.
Yeah, who knows what fun little what fun little extra things we get in that season.
Yeah, I also want to acknowledge that at some point during season 10, we are almost certainly going to hit 2,000 YouTube subscribers, and me being a man of my word, we will cover an M. Night Shyamalan film of my choosing.
This is going to hurt.
It won't be good. It won't be good. And then, of course, this doesn't have anything to do with movies, but I'm really looking forward to watching the World Cup this summer.
Good times.
Yeah.
It's we have a lot of great guests that will be joining us, of course, for season 10. And I'm really excited for with the new guests that we'll be having on, as well as our return guests, and who knows what surprises we'll be having with each episode.
Speaking of surprises, I want to make it clear now to our listeners, at least one of these new episodes is going to be exclusive to the Patreon. This is something that we've promised our patrons for a while, exclusive content. So at least one of the films that you just heard listed will only be available to our paid subscribers.
Yeah. And I'm going to go ahead and call it. If we hit a $200 mark, Pat and I are going to play, we're going to do a little 30-minute play along of the Harry Potter Wizarding World video game. So let's see if it happens.
I am not agreeing to that.
All right. It's got to be a little higher.
A little higher. Yeah. But yeah, just brace yourselves, listeners. Our more astute listeners may notice that several of our episodes have been making their way behind the paywall. Several of our season recaps, going back way back in the archive, are now only available behind the paywall. you will continue to see that trend.
Yeah, and again, it's us just showing a lot of appreciation for the folks helping keeping the lights on. But we appreciate all of our listeners, so thank you for all of your continued support. Wow, we've made it through 9 seasons. We're jumping into 10, and it just keeps going. We have not missed a single episode release,
and we won't. We don't take breaks here at Why Wasn't It Better, and we don't plan to.
Yes, sir.
Not when we have so much to offer. Well, Anton, that's it for the season 9 recap. Anything to add before we say goodbye?
Season 9, you've been fine. Season 10, well, let's do it again.
Sounds good to me. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.